guys, how's everybody doing? Hey, I'm doing something tonight that I hope I don't wind up doing habitually, but I've done it in every phase of my life so far, so I don't know why this should be any different. Um, Final Jeopardy is having a contest that I promised to enter, saying I already had not one but two entries. Well, I don't know if I'm going to get to recording both of them, but yes, in fact, I spaced it out and I have not done one, so I'm kind of cramming for the test here at the last minute. Um, Her contest is to come up with a master band, which consists of at least 4 members. They're supposed to be members that have not played together, so I may be cheating here and get myself disqualified right off the bat, but I have an explanation. And other than that, let's see, what other rules are there? Oh, they have to be real people. Oh, these were very real people. They can be living or dead, and unfortunately, some of the folks have passed already. What else? Oh, I have to show music that they made that is part of why I'm making them or including them in this video. So I got all that together, and let's get started, huh? For drums, which I started drums because I think the rhythm section is where a band starts, and really probably because I'm a bass player, I would say it starts with bass, but since I'm being generous here, I'm going to start with drums instead. And who I'm going with there is Joseph Zigaboo Modalista. I think that's the name. Modalista. Yeah, I may not be saying it right, but someone from New Orleans can correct me if not. He is, now see, one of the things is, you know, this is a master band, not of superstar players, because my opinion is those don't work out all that well most of the time. So this is really a bunch of background session type musicians that definitely deserve stardom, but are not household names for the most part. When we get to the front man, you'll definitely know him. So Ziggy, as he is called affectionately, played for what is known as the first funk band, and they were out of New Orleans. They included one of the Neville brothers, and their name is The Meters. The album I'm going to show right up here, that's one that is, it's like the holy grail of funk albums, and I only hope to have it at some point in time, but I can't imagine ever spending the money on it, even should it come available. So I do stream it. Actually, all of these, I do not own the albums right now. They're all streaming ones, but I was informed in the rules for this contest that that was okay, that it could be any format. So we're going with streaming as far as where I get my pictures from and so on. So this will be the Meters' first album. And then moving on to bass, I'm going to go with a guy that every bass player knows. And I guess the thing I've got to say about him is, first of all, he's my idol. He is the bass player as far as I'm concerned. But as far as this program, this contest we're doing here, I'm kind of reaching to include him in that he's really sort of an earlier generation, just barely, but this is a funk band. I haven't said that yet, I don't think. And most funk that people think of as funk has slap bass. You know, Bootsy Collins is probably one of the most famous that way as far as the style, but that just is kind of ubiquitous with what we think of as funk. James Jamerson, who I'm mentioning here, was not a slap bass player, but then neither was the Meters bass player. So funk does have its roots in what would be considered more traditional bass playing, and James Jamerson certainly is well known and heralded that way. He did not play with a number of different bands, but he played on any number of different albums you would have heard of. He was known affectionately of a band called the Funk Brothers, but they weren't a band at all that I know of. I don't think they ever played a live concert or a gig at all. They were a bunch of session musicians and jazz players primarily that backed up all of the Motown artists. And interestingly enough, they didn't back them up a lot of times. No, instead they put down the music tracks, and then whoever it was recording over the top of them would come in and have to sing over music that was already there. And they put out an incredible amount of music. So Funk Brothers, if you look for it, there's a documentary on them, and there's an excellent CD that I'll be putting up that has the same music that the documentary does on it. I'd suggest looking at that if you're interested at all. On keyboards, we'll have another New Orleans player. His real name, and I'm going to have to look at my cheat sheet for it because nobody knows his real name. Malcolm John Rebennack, maybe, I don't know. But I think you'll probably recognize him as Dr. John. And now he's kind of interesting because he has played session on any number of different albums. I mean, he's pretty prolific in his own right, but he is astoundingly more prolific if you start looking at what else he's played on. So I'm going to show my favorite album right now of his, one that I've actually only pretty recently started listening to, and it's a compilation of several different albums that he did during a very specific part of his career. But like I say, certainly we all know Dr. John. Guitar is kind of an interesting one. I really, until the last minute, wanted to do a reach here, but in the end, I started thinking, you know, if I'm like tour manager or whoever putting the band together here is, I don't know that I could pull the trigger. Who I want to put in is Jimi Hendrix, and I do that based on knowing, first of all, what a student of music he was and what a love he had for the funk format and form of music. So I'm thinking, you know, that I could justify it. He could be playing funk, but since there really isn't any good example that he could pull it off, yeah, it'd be a stretch. So I'm going to go another direction. But who I'm having instead is pretty memorable if you don't know him, at least by his real name, as the guitar player for Ohio Players, which of course was one of the big funk bands in the primary funk time. And his name is Leroy Sugarfoot Bonner. If you've seen any Ohio Players videos or whatever, he almost always plays a double neck guitar. And so that's the way you'll recognize him. Of course, like a lot of African Americans from that point in time, he's got a big afro and, of course, wears the wild clothes that all the funk players wore at the time. So that kind of stuff isn't going to help you out in recognizing him. But the guitar with the two necks, I'm pretty sure that's going to stand out for you. Now, as far as frontman, I don't know how you could have anybody else for this kind of band. It's got to be James Brown, right? I mean, who else is there? So James Brown going away is who I have to have here. And the album I'm showing up here is the one I listen to most of the time, interestingly, it does not have him singing. The story I've heard that goes with this album is he came in with a terrible cold, and so didn't feel like he could sing up to par. And but they still had the studio time booked. So he sat down at the piano and they did a bunch of instrumentals. So this album I'm showing, you may not think of as a James Brown album, but it's definitely a killer album nonetheless, and I suggest looking at it. Then finally, I'm going to put the James Brown horn section in there too, because again, I don't think there's a better horn section out there. I mean, if you force me to put someone else, I'd probably go with the Tower of Power horn section, but really James Brown is it, I think. And interesting story about them. Rumor has it is that he was such a stickler for detail that he would fine them for every wrong note. So they would get docked as far as their pay if they screwed up at all, which I think is really interesting. Okay, so that's it. I'm over time here, I think. That's my master band, and yeah, had a lot of fun putting it together. Thanks. See you soon. Bye.